Good morning, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us for today's learning session on a virtual adaptation tool salon. It looks like we're having a handful of folks still trickle in. Let's just give another minute, and then we'll go ahead and get started. All right, well, let's go ahead and get started. We have a lot to cover today and just an hour to show you 3 really great tools that are available to help guide and support your efforts. We'll be looking at CalAdapt, Adaptation Clearinghouse, and the Atlas Marketplace. This webinar is organized by the Alliance of Regional Collaboratives for Climate Adaptation, or ARCCA, and my name is Julia Kim. I'm a project manager at the Local Government Commission and serving as the coordinator for ARCCA, and I will be your moderator for this webinar. So a quick overview of today's agenda. I'll first provide a brief intro to ARCCA for those of you who may not be familiar with us. Then to our feature presentations, we're excited to have Susan Wilhelm, Melissa Diaz, and Elle Henson with us today to provide an overview of these 3 really robust tools. And following each presentation, you'll have the opportunity to ask specific questions about the tool. And we'll also try to reserve some time at the end if you have any broader questions that may be applicable to all 3 of our panelists. And before we get started, I just wanted to go over a few logistical items. Because of the large number of attendees today, everyone will be muted except for our panelists. So we ask that you type your questions into the question box of your control panel. And please feel free to submit your questions at any point during the webinar, during each of the presentations, or after. And again, broader questions applicable to all presenters will be saved for our final round of Q&A. And any questions that we don't get to, we'll ask our presenters to respond after the webinar, and we'll be sharing their written responses in a follow-up email, as well as the webinar recording and the PowerPoint presentations. So what is ARCCA? ARCCA is a network of leading regional collaboratives from across California that work together to advance adaptation statewide and work to increase local capacity to build community resilience. And through ARCCA, members connect with their peers across the state to exchange knowledge and tools, best practices. They engage in targeted problem solving and implement joint campaigns, and they're working to effectively break down silos across sectors and jurisdictions. And ARCCA is working to advance effective and equitable adaptation by engaging in state policy development, facilitating dialogue between key decision makers and stakeholders, and creating resources to accelerate action on the ground. And our current membership consists of regional collaboratives that cover the Sierra Nevada region, the Sacramento Capital region, the San Francisco Bay Area, the Los Angeles region, and the San Diego region. And together, these regions represent over 80% of the state's population. And this past year, ARCCA has been engaged with the Central Coast Climate Collaborative organizers, providing some guidance on governance and formation, and now we're just standing by to hear about their formal establishment, which we hope will be very soon, so stay tuned for that. And we also have the Governor's Office of Planning and Research participating as an ex officio member, serving as a critical channel between local and regional entities and key state agencies. And again, the Local Government Commission serves as the coordinator. So now it is my pleasure to introduce our 3 presenters. First, Susan Fisher-Wilhelm leads energy-related environmental research at the California Energy Commission with a focus on issues related to climate change and public health. She manages the development of CalAdapt, a web-based interactive visualization tool that conveys risks of climate change with regard to the energy sector resilience, local planning, and Californians who live in affected communities. Susan has also worked for the state of California since 2006, when she joined the Air Resources Board as the Science, Technology, and Health Policy Advisor to the chairman. While at ARB, she also served as staff lead on research planning and supported recreational vehicle regulations to address the federal 8-hour ozone standard as called for by California's 2007 state implementation plan. Susan earned her PhD in Environmental Health Sciences at UC Berkeley and her MSc in Mechanical and Aerospace Engineering at Princeton, and she holds a BS in Physics from Davidson College. We also have Melissa Diaz, who is an Institute Associate at the Georgetown Climate Center. She manages the center's Adaptation Clearinghouse, State Progress Tracker, and equitable climate adaptation work. Previously, Melissa worked on adaptation at the Union of Concerned Scientists, the Consensus Building Institute, and the California Energy Commission. Melissa is a graduate of MIT and Harvard. And we also have Elle Hempen. Elle learned firsthand about the frustration and inefficiency of infrastructure pre-development and procurement while managing the $3 million Reinvest initiative, which generated new resilience strategies and projects for 8 U.S. cities. Seeing an opportunity to help communities not only save money, but make smarter infrastructure choices, Elle spearheaded the development of the Atlas. Prior to founding the Atlas, Elle served as a Director of Strategy and Partnership at Refocus Partners and as Special Assistant in the U.S. EPA's Office of International and Tribal Affairs, where her portfolio included initiatives to expand investments in urban sustainability and design programs to support environmental entrepreneurship. Elle is an MBA candidate at UCLA's Anderson School of Management and received her BA in Public Policy from the University of Michigan Gerald R. Ford School of Public Policy. All right, and on to our feature presentation. We'll first have Susan chatting a bit about CalAdapt. And a bit about CalAdapt while we transition. CalAdapt is the state of California's authoritative website portraying how climate change is projected to play out at the local level. CalAdapt provides access to peer-reviewed data, interactive visualizations, a platform for development of custom tools, and supporting information to help a variety of audiences understand localized risks related to climate change. CalAdapt users include scientific researchers, energy sector stakeholders working on resilience planning, state agencies such as California's Department of Public Health, and community-level planners. The site has been developed by UC Berkeley's Geospatial Innovation Facility with support from California Energy Commission. Thank you so much for joining us today, Susan.
Thank you. Thanks for the opportunity, and thanks everyone for attending. I'm going to jump right in. There we go. The things I'd like for you to walk away knowing today is just a general understanding of what is CalAdapt and why the state of California created it. I want you to get a glimpse of what you can learn at the site, as well as what features are forthcoming, because we're in a period of very active enhancements. I'd also like to present a bit about why CalAdapt is important for both planning and research in the state of California. And I'm really excited about letting you in on how to help shape the future of CalAdapt. CalAdapt was created by the state of California, as Julia mentioned, under contract with UC Berkeley's Geospatial Innovation Facility. The idea was to convey local climate risks based on peer-reviewed science. The state of California has a wealth of peer-reviewed science related to regional climate impacts, but prior to CalAdapt, it really wasn't readily accessible to a variety of audiences. So CalAdapt is tasked with presenting climate change projections in an easy-to-understand format. We're really working hard to provide plain English descriptions while retaining scientific rigor. We have a number of interactive maps and charts, and we enable researchers and folks who need to do more detailed or custom analyses access to primary climate change data. As Julia mentioned, the site was developed at UC Berkeley by the Geospatial Innovation Facility. I manage development from the California Energy Commission, and we've had a number of people who have contributed greatly. We have an advisory committee that's engaged in helping us get feedback and understand user needs. Melissa Diaz did some wonderful work for us in 2014 in helping us to understand how people are using it, what's useful, what needs to be improved. And I'd also like to acknowledge the Stockholm Environmental Institute, who developed a prototype version prior to the release of what we have now, and Amy Lours, who was key in the original vision for this work, as well as securing funding. This is what you see when you go to caladapt.org. This is what we now call version 1.0, released in June 2011. Since I don't have time to show you everything about CalAdapt today, I would encourage everyone to take advantage of this brief 7-minute video tour available here. And I will show you a little bit of tools on CalAdapt 1.0. These tools focus on temperature changes, snowpack changes, sea level rise, and wildfire risk. A little bit about the guiding principles of CalAdapt and what makes CalAdapt special. What I'd like to emphasize here is that all data on CalAdapt are peer-reviewed, so we are really trying to provide data that the state of California can stand behind and say, yes, these are rigorous data. All data are publicly available for download. You don't have to pay for it. You don't have to pay a consultant to get to it. And as far as usability, we're working hard to foster the translation of raw scientific data into usable tools. I'll say a little bit about that later. And we're also working to connect users with other resources related to planning for climate resilience. What you're looking at here is the home page for what we refer to right now as CalAdapt 2.0. It's in beta, but everything that you see at the publicly available site revolves around vetted, peer-reviewed data. So it's in beta, but what's there to the public won't change. So I'd encourage everyone to have a look at it and give feedback. There are 3 main tools available right now and a number of tools forthcoming. I'll talk about that later. I want to say a few words about what's different in CalAdapt 2.0 from CalAdapt 1.0. First, the downscaling that is used to translate global climate model results, such as those used by the IPCC, into results that are fine-grained enough to shed light on the issues that California faces. Those downscaled data are produced by a new downscaling routine known as LOCA. And what's important for you to know about that is that LOCA provides greatly improved capture of temperature extremes and precipitation distribution. And these are 2 of the most fundamental attributes of climate projections when we're trying to understand local and regional vulnerability in California. Temperature extremes obviously tell us about heat waves, as well as cold snaps, which are expected to persist into the future. And precipitation distribution has a great deal to say about risks related to inland flooding, as well as coastal flooding. CalAdapt 2.0 data also align with CMIP 5. We don't need to translate that. The important thing to know is that this was the basis for the IPCC's 5th assessment report. So CalAdapt 2.0 brings us into line with the latest, internationally stamped body of climate research. I'm going to show you 2 tools today, starting with the extreme heat tool, which takes advantage of very high resolution data developed by this LOCA method. These data are at daily time resolution and 1/16th degree spatial resolution. That level of spatial resolution means that we are resolving climate impacts on a grid of approximately 6 kilometers by 6 kilometers, or about 3 miles by 3 miles. I will also show you new data related to sea level rise. What is new and special about these data are a few things. One is that they are very, very high resolution hydrodynamical data. By high resolution, I mean that we are resolving inundation risk at a 3 to 5 meter scale in the Bay and Delta. And when I say this is hydrodynamical, it's sophisticated flood and storm modeling that actually simulates the mechanics of water movement and the interaction of that with very high resolution digital elevation maps. So this is not the crude so-called bathtub model that was available at 1.0 as a first cut. The other thing that's special about this sea level rise data set is that it covers all of California's coast as well as the Bay and the Delta, and it is singular in having that level of coverage. Okay, so let's have a look at the extreme heat tool on CalAdapt 2.0. What you're looking at right now is a grid cell in Sacramento, and What we're about to do is change the location. When you go to change the location, you find that you have a number of different options for aggregating the data in support of visualization and analysis. We have the default grid that I mentioned, this 1/16 degree. Actually, it's between 6 and 7 kilometers. We can look at things on the county scale. We can look at watersheds, and we can look at census tracts, with the bonus that these census tracts are color-coded according to a tool known as CalEnviroScreen. I'll say a bit more about CalEnviroScreen in a moment. We have a number of additional aggregation options forthcoming. These are currently grayed out, and I just want to point out that they include the custom ability to upload your own boundary, your own shapefile. And this was very important, for example, to our partners in the utility sector who want to be able to upload shapefiles of specific assets and look at risks in those asset areas. All right, so I mentioned CalEnviroScreen, and I just want to say that this color coding is such that deeper and brighter shades of red indicate higher scores on CalEnviroScreen. High scores are vulnerable hotspots based on socio-demographic and environmental and pollution indices. And this is a tool that the state uses to help us understand where to target greenhouse gas emissions reduction fund investments. Okay, so now that we have selected a fairly high score, which means vulnerable census tract near Fresno, this is what the extreme heat tool shows us. I've selected RCP 8.5. That's an emission scenario that is often referred to simply as high emissions, but really what that translates into as continued growth at 2% per year in carbon emissions. You'll see here that the extreme heat threshold is defined based on local historical observed data. This is really important because in Fresno, a 95-degree day is simply not hot in the summer, whereas in Oakland or Richmond, that can be associated with serious public health risks. So what this extreme heat tool does is define the extreme heat threshold in a locally relevant way. You see in the gray here, historically observed data. You see that typically there have been fewer than 10 extreme heat days per year, maybe as many as 15 or 20. But you see that in the future, according to the 4 global climate models that we've selected, we're expecting far more extreme heat days. In fact, you see that historically we only had 4 such days per year, where the daily high temperature was above 106.7. In the future, we're looking at perhaps 55 by end of century under a high emission scenario. And also please note that the scale here goes up to 120 days per year above 106.7 to accommodate the amount of variability we see in our projections. Here's another way of looking at projected extreme heat events for this census tract. What you're looking at here on the y-axis is so-called warm months of the year, from April to October. Now you see that historically, between 1950 and say 2010, these days were somewhat sparse, and the colors were fairly dark. Most of these days were confined to say June through early September. Moving forward, however, we see that the timing of extreme heat days is much wider. They start as early as May, they run well into October, and you'll also notice that in addition to having many more extreme heat days spread over a wider portion of the year, the colors of these dots change. So let's look at this. What does the yellow dot mean? Well, what we're seeing here is that the yellow dots are ranging between 113 degrees Fahrenheit and 131 degrees. It's a bit sobering. Okay, let's see. The next tool I'd like to show you is our sea level rise tool. I'm just going to go through a series of snapshots that show what happens as sea level rise plus extreme storm events in the Delta. Well, let me step back. What you're looking at here is California's Sacramento-San Joaquin Delta. And as many of you know, this is a very, very vulnerable area. Much of it's below sea level. I've pointed here to Sherman Island and McDonald Island because both of these so-called islands have sensitive energy infrastructure. So at the Energy Commission, we are concerned about flooding in these areas. So what you see here is inundation depth, which is flood depth, associated with 0 meters of sea level rise, current sea level, plus an extreme storm event. And you see, a little bit of yellow, a little bit of blue. So here's our scale here. Now we're looking at 0.5 meter of sea level rise. We see quite a bit more flooding. 1 meter, we start to see far more widespread flooding. And this is 1.4 meters, which is very plausible for end of century sea level rise. And what you see here is that Sherman Island as well as McDonald Island have substantial flooding with this scenario. I'm going to show you a few slides from CalAdapt 1.0. What you're looking at here is the local climate snapshot. It's an easy way for a user to click on a grid cell and look at the different climate impacts that this tool focuses on. You can learn more about this at the tour that I indicated earlier. Another tool on CalAdapt 1.0 that will be at 2.0 soon is the degrees of change map. So what you're looking at here is projected daily high temperatures in June on the left-hand side versus projected daily high temperatures in November. This is important because it's showing us that regional distribution of climate change is not uniform. So energy sector planners in California need to prepare for more electricity demand in Northern California in early summer. And in case you can't read it, this red scale goes up to 10.5 degrees Fahrenheit. In November, however, we see much more change in the high temperatures in Southern California. And the red here goes up to about 7 degrees. CalAdapt 1.0 and soon 2.0 also show us projected snow water equivalent. In 1950, snow water equivalent in April, which is key to planning for water resource management as well as energy sector resources. This represents the snowpack, and here we see a 70 to 90% reduction under a high emission scenario. As I mentioned earlier, there are a number of features forthcoming on CalAdapt 2.0. Lots of new data sets coming out. Soon you'll be able to download the sea level rise data I showed you, as well as snowpack, stream flow, wildfire risk, and monthly temperature analyses. We're working on rolling out new visualizations and tools, additional shape files, and we will also have a portal to the Integrated Climate Action and Resiliency Program, or ICARP. This is a wonderful resource that is being led by the Governor's Office of Planning and Research, and it will provide people who are trying to cope with climate resilience with guidance documents, case studies, and other resources. We're also coordinating with Governor's Office of Planning and Research on local hazard mitigation, general planning, well, not so much the guidelines, but on providing a resource that helps people incorporate climate change into the general planning process. And the next thing that we're working on, we're really excited about, is development of custom tools to support adaptation planning in the energy sector. So one of the neat things about CalAdapt 2.0 is that it's built on an applications programming interface. So users can build their own custom tools to manipulate the data in ways that directly speak to decision-making or planning processes. And I just want to throw a call out. We're really interested in identifying people who are, have tools in mind and have the capacity to develop them. We're interested in partnering with folks to get some test tools out there. I want to say a few words about how CalAdapt supports research. As many of you know, California undertakes periodic assessments of the impacts of climate change on the state. CalAdapt is an integral part of these assessments in several ways. For one, CalAdapt serves the climate scenarios upon which this interdisciplinary body of research is based. So people who are looking at wildfire risks and how that impacts homeowners insurance, people who are looking at public health risks associated with heat waves or energy sector management in a time of drought, they are all using the same scenarios, which is going to allow us to integrate results across sectors and produce a coherent research report, as well as coordinated strategies to cope with climate change. CalAdapt is also going to be visualizing results from the assessment. For example, probabilistic forecasting tools that help energy sector or agricultural planning incorporate climate projections will be on CalAdapt. And finally, as part of the assessment, CalAdapt is developing tools to support decision making. And we're focusing on the energy sector simply because our funding constrains us to do so, but we are eager to expand our breadth and collaborate with other folks as well. We also have an interface with resilience planning on the policy side. I won't go into all of this because we're running really short on time. I just want to point out that the Governor's Office of Planning and Research has a technical advisory group that will soon release guidance on resilience planning in California. And the research that we're performing with the assessment in coordination and collaboration with the resources agency all uses common scenarios. And this technical advisory group is also identifying planning parameters relevant to infrastructure investments, planning parameters that are sensitive to climate considerations, and we're working to be able to feed information into that process as well. We have a number of key users, obviously state and regional agencies. One that I've worked particularly closely with is the Department of Public Health, who is using data and tools on CalAdapt as part of a project to help local public health departments build resistance against climate effects. We've also been working closely with the utility sector, which is participating in the Department of Energy's Resilience Partnership to identify their vulnerability and develop plans to build resilience. As I promised, I would show you how to give us your feedback. We love hearing from people. You can email support@caladapt.org. You can email me personally. And if you go to contact us, we'd love to hear how you're using the data or what you would like to do with the data if only you could. And there's also a help button available here. Thank you so much, and I'd be eager to hear from everyone.
Great, thanks so much, Susan. I think we have time for a couple of questions, and just a reminder to all participants, keep those questions coming. We'll make sure that we have all presenters answer your questions, even if we can't get to it today on the webinar. So one question is, or two-part question, when will the observed data sets include information from the last 2 decades? And also, is it recommended that we not assume that all data sets will share the same timeframes?
Okay, so wait, so the first one was when will we update our historical data?
From the last 2 decades.
Right, okay, so right now, the observed data actually do go through 2013. If you follow this gray line, you see that there's some overlap between the gray historical observed data and the colored projection data. I want to also just point out, I know everyone knows this, but it's always useful to point it out, that we don't expect the projections to predict, for example, the 2006 heat wave. We expect them to predict a heat wave in a time frame congruent with 2006, but please don't look at the observed data and expect the projections to lie right on it. They should have the same statistical properties. Anyway, observed data do go through 2013. We will continue to update that as available. One thing that we are interested in doing is bringing data from California's climate tracker, which is continually updated with observed data to CalAdapt. But right now that data is not available at the same gridded resolution that CalAdapt data are. And the second question was about timeframes.
Is it recommended that we not assume that all data sets share the same timeframes?
All of the I'm actually not sure I'm understanding that correctly. I'm not sure if you mean the projected interval or the temporal resolution of the data, but in each case, you can scroll down on the tool page for details about the data, as well as a link to the peer-reviewed source that gives you all of the technical work. And you're always welcome to email support@caladap.org, and we will clarify anything that's confusing.
Perfect. And one more question for you at this point. Will Virus Screen 3.0 be integrated in CalAdapt 2.0 once released?
I anticipate that we would do that. It would be in our queue, but there's every reason for us to want to do that. It's not in our current scope of work. That's why I'm using ambiguous language. So yes, I want to do that, and no, it's not in our current funding stream, but we do expect sustained funding for energy sector work.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much again, Susan. Again, to participants, any remaining questions, we'll make sure Susan has a chance to answer them, and we'll share that out with you as follow-up. And next up, we have Melissa here, and we'll hear about the Adaptation Clearinghouse. The Adaptation Clearinghouse is a web-based library that provides access to over 2,000 climate adaptation resources, including plans, policy recommendations, and laws. Public officials, community-based organizations, and others can use this library to identify and share tools, templates, and guidance relevant to adaptation decisions in their own work. Sector and network portals allow users to explore a curated subset of resources that provide basic overviews and detailed guidance relevant to various interest areas. Thanks so much, Melissa, for joining us today.
Thank you, Julia, and thank you, Susan, for the great first presentation. So I am here presenting Georgetown Climate Center's Adaptation Clearinghouse. While this tool has been around for a while, since 2011, this past summer we remodeled the site, and we're really proud of this new version because it has a bunch of new functionality that is the direct result of some engagement that we did with users like you all. So I'm excited to show you what we have. I'm going to start here on the home page and sort of go through each of the different categories of information that we have, which are shown on these tabs. So resources is where you're going to land as a home page, sectors, networks, my clearinghouse, and about. So sectors and networks are where you're going to find curated portals for specific interest areas. My clearinghouse will be your home base as a user once you've made an account. And about is where you can learn more about the Georgetown Climate Center and about the Adaptation Clearinghouse, which is where I'll start since I know that some of you might not be familiar with Georgetown Climate Center. We were founded in 2009 and are attached to Georgetown Law School. We work on both adaptation and mitigation policy. And on adaptation, I like to describe us as having basically three mechanisms in which we move adaptation action forward. So one is that we do deep technical analyses around specific legal and policy questions, often through our students at the law school and addressing specific client interests around adaptation. We also use our convening power to bring leaders and stakeholders together. For example, we host a bi-monthly call with state practitioners to share best practices across states. And then the final thing, which is shown here in the Adaptation Clearinghouse, is that we provide resources that are meant to help adaptation practitioners move forward. So that includes this Adaptation Clearinghouse. It also includes a number of toolkits, including a recently launched Green Infrastructure Toolkit, which you can get to right here on the homepage. It's our featured resource right now. And our Sea Level Rise Toolkit and Urban Heat Toolkit. And then we also have sort of a sister tool to the Adaptation Clearinghouse, which is our Adaptation Plans and Progress Tracker, where we actually look at every state's adaptation plan and then go through all of the goals in that adaptation plan and assess how well the states are meeting the goals in their plan. This can also be an easy place if you're just interested in finding state laws, agency plans, anything like that. It's a nice homepage where you can find all of that information put into one place. So just to go into what the Adaptation Clearinghouse is, and really this first tab, the Resources tab, is sort of the heart and soul of the Adaptation Clearinghouse. In most basic terms, it's just a database of resources that can serve as a library to those working on adaptation. So what is a resource? Resources are other tools like CalAdapt. It might be tool plans that can be used as models and templates for future planning. It might be laws and policies that can provide new inspiration for new policies or just help you understand what's happening in the adaptation landscape. It includes white papers, guidelines, examples of community engagement, funding programs, really any resources that we think will help people who are working on adaptation understand what's going on and what they can do and what are some of the policies that they can pursue. So the homepage is built with sort of two main goals. One is that you can stay up to date on adaptation, because we know that adaptation is a field that is constantly moving and constantly changing, and it can be a little bit overwhelming. So if you scroll down on the homepage, you'll see an area that says recently added resources, where you can see resources that are brand new. So it's based on its publication date. We update this pretty much daily. So we try and get things out as quickly as we can. So this can be just a good place to see what is happening, what's new, what's exciting. And then the second part is to be able to find that needle in the haystack. We understand that there are so many adaptation resources, and our database has over 2,000 of them, and you are probably looking for something very specific. So you have two ways of being able to search our entire database. One is you could just search by state, so you could select California and do a search, and there you'll see a bunch of the California resources mapped out, and you can hover above any of these and select resources. Or we also have a long list of California resources that you can explore. California is quite a prolific state, so we have 301 results, which is likely too many for you. So you can also just do a keyword search to try and get at what you're looking for. So let's say you are looking for flooding resources. You can do a search. That's obviously also a very popular term. So we are getting 655 results here, which is probably still far too many for you to look through. So we have the ability for you to do filters to really narrow in on exactly what you're looking for. So let's say you are only looking for resources that are for or aimed at the local level. So you can limit by jurisdictional focus. That's still 293, so that's still a lot. So you could continue to filter down and say that you are really only interested in resources in the Southwest. And now we're at 47, which is a much more manageable set of resources. And so that's a list that you can start exploring. And you can continue to apply those filters until you find exactly what you're looking for. So the second piece that I want to talk about are these sector and network pages. And these were built off of feedback that we heard that while people really enjoy being able to do keyword searches and to explore the resources in our system through these mechanisms, they also wanted some curation. They wanted us to take a first cut at some of the resources and provide them a starting place if they were just coming to the site wanting to see what's out there but weren't really sure what they were looking for. So for this, we created these sector and network pages that do exactly that. And so I am going to go into the coastal sector as an example of this. So this is a page that our team built out, and you'll see that it is organized into a number of tabs here on the side, starting with popular resources. And all of our sector pages, popular resources, will be the first tab that you'll see, and there you'll be able to just see other resources that other users have rated. And we have to say that because this tool is relatively new, we don't have as many ratings as we would like. So I really encourage all of you to go into a resource and just give it a rating. It's pretty easy to do. So you can read through the summary of that resource and give it a rating based on how useful it is to you, and that will make all of these popular resources tab more user-friendly and more useful. So under that, you'll see in every sector page, we also have what's called a basics tab, and that is a tab of resources that we have hand-selected working with experts in that sector as resources that are a good starting point if you're new to adaptation in the sector, or are just trying to get an overview of what's going on and what's out there. So this is a place where you can start. You'll also find that in a number of these pages, we have these little promotional boxes that link you over to other resources where we think it's also good information, and that might be a good place for you to also check out. Otherwise, the tabs in each of the sectors are going to be organized mostly around what kind of resource something is. So for example, in the plans tab, you're going to see any plan that we have, any adaptation plan or plan that has an adaptation section that we've added to our database that has a section on coastal issues. And then each of these can also be filtered, and often the filters are going to be customized to the specific tab. So for example, this tab you can filter by plan type. So if you're really just interested in coastal management planning, you can filter that and have a much shorter list of resources to look at there. Some of the sector tabs will also have topical tabs, like the fisheries tab here in the coastal sector. That's going to be a topical rather than resource type tab. We also always include lists of organizations that might be useful to talk to or to explore if you're working on issues of adaptation. And finally, if you want to just search the entire sector and what is out there of all of our resources related to coastal issues, you can do that using the geographic search and narrow in using keywords and similar filters. So our network pages work pretty similarly to our sector pages. The big difference between our sector pages and our network pages is that we built all of these in partnerships with external organizations. So in terms of networks right now, we have the Local Government Professionals Network, which we built in partnership with the Urban Sustainability Directors Network, the State Government Professionals Network, which we built with our State Policy Forum team. Very soon we'll have our American Society of Adaptation Professional Network launching, so keep an eye out for that. Also coming soon will be an equity portal where we're going to be collecting and organizing all of the resources in our system that have a component on social justice and equity, and that's being built with an advisory team of cities and environmental justice organizations. And we'll also hope eventually to add a tribal government professionals page here. So within these, I am going to show you the local government, but first I'm actually going to log in because while almost all of the stuff in the Adaptation Clearinghouse, almost all of our resources you can view without being logged in. To see the network pages, we do actually require that you have a user account. It's completely free. I really encourage you to do it. There's other stuff that you can do once you have an account, which I'll be showing you when I go into my clearinghouse. But for this network, it's an open network. All you have to do is hit join network if I'm already in it, so it says leave network there, but there will be a button that says join, and then you just join this network and you are a member of it. And then this is going to look very similar to the sector page, except that all of these tabs were built with a local government audience in mind. And so these can all be explored. And once again, you have filtering that's going to be unique to each of these tabs. So finally, I want to go into my clearinghouse. Once you have an account, you will have access to this tab, and you can put in information about yourself. You can link this directly to your LinkedIn account. If you are a member of the American Society of Adaptation Professionals, I recommend that you use your same login email that you have with ASAP, because that will link the two accounts and will give you access to that ASAP portal. But once you have an account, it's here. And one of the things that you can do is you can add interest areas. So you can go back here and select any of these as areas of interest. And then once you've done that, you will have an easy place to see any new resources related to your interest areas. So if you are interested in California, you can select this and see the newest resources that are coming out of California that are in our system. You'll also have the ability to save resources. So if you go into any of these resources, there'll be a button here that will say save. Right now it says remove because it's already in this list, and you can save it and come back to that resource here. While I'm in a resource, just something to say about the resources is that for every resource, we actually write these summaries that you're seeing here. And we try and pull out the things that we think people working on adaptation are going to be excited about. What's new about this report? What's different about it? How does it innovate? We don't just copy and paste executive summaries. We really try and provide some context. So those summaries are really a great starting place. If you are interested in learning more, it can be really informative. So I do encourage you to read them. I know it's a lot of words, but hopefully those are helpful. In the network activity, you can see what's happening in different networks that you're a part of. Authored resources will show you any resources where you are a named author according to our system. When you join, you can claim authorship over resources, and so you can create that list for yourself. And then rate resources will show any resource where you not only opened the resource and read its summary, but actually went to the resource by hitting the Go to Resource button and went to the original file. And so that we've assumed that you've actually looked at it, and so we're asking you if you can please come back here and give us a rating so that we can help other users find the resources that are great and wonderful. So that's basically what is here in the Adaptation Clearinghouse. I have to say, if we're missing anything that you've worked on, we really would love you to submit it. It's pretty easy. You just hit the Submit a Resource button and then fill in some basic information. You can be pretty detailed, you cannot be. It'll go to our administrators and we'll fill in the rest and get it published into the system if it meets our criteria. So that is what we have, and I am happy to answer any questions.
Great, thank you so much, Melissa. I think we have time for just a couple of questions. So one is that it's really great to see that you have a funding category in some of the resource sections. Is there a way that users can filter funding by eligibility?
So funding is something that we're still trying to figure out exactly how we are going to be presenting this information. Right now, there isn't a way. You can always do a keyword search within any of the tabs and search for what kind of organization you are. And when we write up our summaries, we try and be pretty clear about if it's available for cities, if it's available for states. And so if you're in that funding tab, if you're like working in the coastal sector and you're in the funding tab and you're a city, you could put in the keyword city or put in the jurisdictional focus local, and it will try and narrow down that list that way. So you can get at that information, but we don't have formal ways of doing that otherwise.
Great, thank you. And then I think we have time for one more. What is the criteria used to determine what resource is included in Clearinghouse?
So basically, a resource to be included has to be freely available, so it can't be behind a paywall. There's very rarely cases where we'll include something, but for the most part, no. It has to be about adaptation. So, well, to a certain point. There are a few resources that aren't explicitly about adaptation, but we believe strongly that they are useful for an adaptation audience, and in that case, we'll make that clear in the summary about why it's included, but almost always it has to have some component that's about adaptation. And then it has to be sort of not a social media or news or blog type resource. We don't include those kinds of things, but we do include any reports, any white papers, any tools, anything like that.
Great. Well, thanks again, Melissa, for your presentation. And finally, last but certainly not least, we have the Atlas Marketplace. The Atlas is a new free resource that communities can use to better connect learning directly to action. Atlas users can identify built and installed solutions from a growing global database of projects, quickly and directly connect with each other to share lessons learned and recommendations, and promote RFPs to a wider range of national and international bidders. As an online marketplace, the Atlas is built to help cities, counties, and utilities more easily find, compare, and procure resilient infrastructure solutions. Thanks for joining us, Al.
Thanks so much for having me today, and it's really exciting to go after Susan and Melissa, who have such innovative resources out there. So what's slightly different about the Atlas than the presentations you heard earlier is that we're really focused on projects. So to help transition cities that have spent quite a bit of time using the resources you just heard about to facilitate planning for resilience and adaptation, we're focused on helping cities make the transition from planning to implementation. So what is the Atlas and why did we build it? So the Atlas is an interactive online learning platform and online marketplace focused on resilient infrastructure solutions. And again, it's intended to help cities find, compare, and procure the types of innovative solutions that can help protect them from their greatest challenges. We built the Atlas and a bit about our mission in response to what we were hearing from cities on the ground, which there are great resources out there like those that you just heard about policies and strategies, plans to help cities integrate adaptation planning into their capital plans and into their investment strategies. What there wasn't was an example and a database of installed and under construction projects that can be procured to actually implement those plans. As you guys are probably very aware, in order for cities to move forward with a project, they have to be able to point, both for technical and political reasons, to where the project has already been built. So they're looking for examples from around the world that they can show that they're not the first movers in this space. In something like resilience and adaptation, where it's still a fairly new practice in cities, there's not a ton of examples out there that have been tagged directly to adaptation, even though there's innovation happening around the world that should be. So what we've done is we've built and aggregated a database of projects from around the world that are either built or under construction. So you won't find strategies and plans, but instead you'll find procurable solutions that help cities adapt and respond to challenges that they may face, whether it's sea level rise, increased precipitation, drought, etc. And then on top of that database, we've built a lot of interactive features that allow users to save projects, connect with each other around solutions, and then connect with companies and innovators from around the world that are building solutions. So what our intent is to not only create a space where you can learn about the types of solutions that are out there, but actually connect with each other around those solutions so that it's a safe, hassle-free space to move from planning to implementation. So what I'm going to do is show a really brief video demonstration to just walk you through some of what we see as the key value points. And then I can pull up the website and show, slow down and show a couple of things that may be of interest, and then be happy to answer any questions. The one thing that I'll add is that we're brand new. So we released the Atlas in August of this year. We've been really focused on getting the word out to cities, counties, and utilities who can interact with the database and use it in productive ways. So as has been said previously, and I will repeat, we are absolutely looking for feedback. We're looking for ways that we can continue to build this platform to help serve the folks that we find most important, which are the cities, counties, and utilities who invest in the infrastructure systems that we need for the future. So let me allow you guys to enjoy the silence for a minute and play a quick video.
Hi, Elle. I'm not sure if the video is playing. It might
Oh,
not
it
be
isn't?
with
Then I will just go back and go right to the site. Thank you for letting me know.
Absolutely.
So I'll be quick because I know we're running out of time. So if you can see my screen, hopefully, this is the database of projects. We're adding new projects every day. The projects that are included right now have been sourced by a team of graduate student researchers who are scouring the internet for projects that might be relevant, in addition to pulling projects from companies that we work with who are doing really innovative stuff around the world. So you can filter projects by type, by the impact that they address, by the location, budget, how they were financed. As you open a project, you can see what company was involved with it. You can contact the vendor who's responsible for building it, as well as get some high-level overview information about the projects. Once you've got a backend and a profile created, there's all sorts of things that you can do to help interact with the project data. So you can save favorites, you can save favorite projects, you can save favorite companies, and you can save favorite colleagues. Here's a list of some of our current users so that you can get a range. We've got a good range of cities, some California cities like San Francisco and Los Angeles, but we've also got littler cities from around the world, including Oakland Park, Florida, and Norfolk, Virginia. So it really is intended to run the gamut for size of city. One thing that we are really excited about is you can also search requests for proposals to look for models. So as you're transitioning from planning and into implementation, and you want to find models for resilient RFPs, resilience-focused RFPs, you can look to your colleagues from around the world and use their RFPs as models. And again, you can sort the RFPs based on categories that are really relevant to you. So the project, the type of impact, contract size, etc. And then the last thing that I'll add that might be interesting to the folks on the phone is that while we're collecting projects from companies themselves that have been involved in building these solutions, we're also collecting projects from around the world, from cities as well. And so it's very easy to add a solution. We ask for really basic information. It doesn't take very long to fill it out. But again, it'll add to this database of projects that can be procured from around the world. The sign up itself is fairly easy. It takes about 2 minutes, and essentially it's intended to help capture some of the data about the priorities that a city has, where they are in the planning process, and what they're looking to build moving forward. Very quickly, what do you get by joining strategic learning? And so we really are hoping that we can connect some of the policy issues with some of the project issues and help you navigate a database of real installed procurable projects from around the world. This curated connections piece is something we're really excited about. The Atlas is built to help connect the dots between city users, county users, and utility users, and allow you to initiate conversation with companies when it's useful and when it's appropriate. The procurement piece, obviously, the intent is to improve procurement by providing models that can be replicated to help you streamline the writing process, but also that we distribute open RFPs to companies around the world to make sure that cities are getting bids from the best and bids from the experts around the world in this space. And then the last piece, influence on future development. Obviously, as I said, we're brand new, and so we're looking for feedback. We're looking for ways that we can continue to build out the tool that makes sense for cities, counties, and utilities. So I encourage you to reach out. Here's a bit, just quotes that I like to put up at the end. The website I listed as before, and it'll be sent out afterwards. It's www.theatlas.com. It takes about 2 minutes to create a free profile. It is and always will continue to be free for public users. So please feel free to check it out, and definitely reach out to me with questions. So I know I'll stop there and answer any questions that we have immediately, given that we're running out of time.
Great, thank you so much, Elle. We do have one question. It's really great to see a repository of adaptation solutions. Does the Atlas also include planned implementation projects or only completed?
So right now, it's a great question. So right now, our sort of level for entry is it has to be something that's under construction or already built. And the reason is because we don't want to merge too much with some of my colleagues who are looking at sort of the planning process. That being said, we know that because of how cities are transitioning, there are a number of projects that are in the pipeline. So the RFPs are being written, et cetera. So we're currently working on a new build, or I said an additional build that will allow us to include projects that are further up the pipeline. So projects that are being planned, but may not necessarily be already, shovel in the ground.
Great. And
so
one
more
more question.
Soon. Yeah.
Perfect. And one more question. In addition to cities and counties and folks who are implementing these solutions, can non-governmental organizations also upload solutions and use this site?
Absolutely, and another great question. So I absolutely encourage NGOs and other organizations to add solutions. Every solution gets vetted by our team, so we make sure, again, that it fits our our low bar requirement that it's something that's procurable and it's a project or a tool that can be used by a city directly. So I absolutely encourage NGOs to add solutions. The best way for NGOs to interact is to add solutions. They can absolutely sort through the projects. The entire project database is open to the public. It's the back-end stuff, the saving solutions, connecting with each other, and posting RFPs that you have to create a profile for. And again, that's exclusive to city, county, and utility representatives to make sure that we're managing those relations and keeping that sort of safe, hassle-free space.
Great, thanks so much, Elle. And thank you to all of our presenters for joining us today, from data sets and models to policy and planning strategies to implementation. Hopefully you'll find these tools valuable in informing and supporting your efforts. And thank you to all of you for joining us today. This past hour has been incredibly informative. Please feel free to follow up with each of these individuals separately, just volunteering that on behalf of them. And we hope that you can stay tuned for our next webinar. As a reminder, the webinar recording and PowerPoints will be sent out to all participants and registrants by email early next week. And to learn more about ARCCA, please visit us online at arccacalifornia.org, or feel free to reach out to me. And to learn more about these tools and really explore them, please check out their tools, visit their websites. And that concludes our webinar. Thank you all so much for joining us today.